Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. I'm really excited about today's episode. It's about working through your emotions. And I often hear from clients that they're scared to connect to their emotions because they're afraid they're not going to be able to work through them and they're going to get stuck in them. And so they tend to want to avoid, move away from, numb them. And what I know after doing all this work for these years is if we don't connect to the core emotions, we will not make progress and move through the pain and the trauma and the fear. So I thought today's episode is really an important one to learn what are the core emotions, how do I move through them, and how do I feel more empowered to connect with them, because we're conditioned out of our feelings, even though they're there, very early on in life. So let's start with identifying the 7 core emotions. And I've talked about this on previous episodes, and I think it's really important to jot these down. So if you're in your car or you're driving, circle back and take a moment to write these down and really memorize them, because it's a cheat sheet. So people are like, I don't know what I feel. This is a way to go, well, let me sit with each of these emotions and see. And I typically encourage people to pick one to start with, even though you might have multiple emotions at a time. So the 7 core emotions, and this is based on neuroscience and research over decades, that they've identified and whittled down the core emotions are the deepest emotions. Some of them may surprise you. They are anger, fear, sadness, disgust, joy, excitement, and sexual excitement. Let's briefly dive into these one at a time. Anger, which can also be a secondary emotion to cover up some of these other emotions like fear and sadness. And there's a difference between rage and anger. We're talking about a healthy anger that can propel us to set boundaries, that can propel us to have a healthy sense of self. Second one is fear. These are in no particular order. Fear. Third one is sadness, disgust. And oftentimes people really don't want to say they're disgusted with someone or something. So it's a hard one for them to connect with, and an important one. Joy. And we think that we want joy all the time. This is what we're working for when they come to therapy. It's like, I want more joy. What we know is, as children, all these emotions come organically. And we think that we want just to be happy. And what I tell people is these are like waves. They come and go, or clouds moving in the sky. Emotions change. You don't just stay in one emotion. So we have to invite all the emotions in order to access the joy. If we numb out one, we're numbing them all out. The next one is excitement. A lot of people chase excitement. And the last one is sexual excitement. And that one, a lot of people don't talk about. And it's a natural part of being a human. It's a natural part of the body's response. These can all be ways to create more meaning in your life. It's a navigational system. And if we do not connect to them, we will feel lost at sea. It's like a sailboat without a sail. And if we don't connect with these core emotions, you will continue to feel like you're lost in life. And thoughts are an important part of also the human experience and body sensations. Thoughts create meaning out of the emotions. And those typically take us into the dark abyss, the thinking or the beliefs around what we feel. And if we don't connect to the core emotions, we will develop anxiety, guilt, and shame. Now, I want to distinguish between these three. So really, guilt is about our behavior. And a lot of times it's out of alignment with our values or maybe the rules we've kind of set for ourselves. And it can lead us to make some very positive changes in our lives. It can wake us up. It can evolve us. It can expand us. Oftentimes we think of it as a bad thing, but that's because people have confused guilt and shame. Shame is, I'm not good enough. Shame is about the self. Shame says, I'm not worth anything. I have no worth and value. There's something wrong with me. I'm defective. And that often, those are all rooted in lies. And that can take us down into the dark abyss. And then anxiety is really rooted in fear and pain. And if we do not connect to those core emotions, we will stay anxious, we will stay in guilt, and we'll stay in shame. And nobody wants to feel those things, those emotions. And so they've learned ways, maladaptive ways, to move away from those feelings. And those things down, perfectionism, addictions, so work addiction, alcohol, shopping, food, pills, smoking, people pleasing. The list goes on. And what we want to do is we don't want to feel any of those things because we think it's too hard, too painful. I can't stand it. I hear this a lot. I can't stand the way it feels. I can't stand being in the pain. Yeah, that makes sense. Nobody really likes it. And what I work with people to do is say, work with, I can stand it. I can stand it. I can stand it. And what I work with them is saying, I can stand to sit with the pain. Let's try a minute. Let's try a second. Let's try, because when we think we can't stand it, guess what we're going to do is we're going to create the same patterns that we've had our whole lives. We're going to create that ways we've moved around it. We've moved over it and we haven't moved through it. And so we never feel like we're making progress. We never feel like we're working through it because we're stuck in it. And so one of the things I really teach people, it's like if I'm having a conversation with a client, we talk about human development and where we might have gotten stuck along the continuum, what trauma, what neglect, where did we get stuck in not connecting to our core emotions? And if we had primary caregivers that really didn't connect to their core emotions, chances are we don't either. Or they might have had really intense emotions, and that's really because they didn't connect to the core emotions. They wanted to block them, and they did maladaptive things to deal with their feelings. And if we don't deal with the feelings, we get stuck in our lives, and we call that arrested development. And I know there's a show, Arrested Development, never seen it. But anyways, sidebar note, if we do not connect to those core emotions, we live a very disconnected life. It's how we feel alive. It's how we access the multitude of wisdom that lies within. And this is something I'm very passionate about, is taking responsibility for your own feelings, not other people's feelings, your own. And when we take responsibility for our own feelings and we're willing to lean in and connect, that is where the power lies in healing. And so people say, well, I don't even know where to start. Like, I don't even know what I feel. When I say, how do you feel? Not, I don't have a clue. I don't know. I'm angry. Okay. What do you feel in your body when you feel anger? And they'll say, oh, I can feel it. Just the adrenaline pumping through my body, or my chest is tight. Or sadness. Where do you feel sadness in your body? And that might be in your heart center. That also might be in your throat. Where do you feel shame? Shame is like a wash. It's like a hot flash sometimes for people. And it's just, you start sweating, and that's through the body. Fear might be in your gut. You might have that pit in your stomach. And so the body sensations are oftentimes the first place I'll encourage people to start with identifying the core emotion. Notice the body sensation. Where do you feel it in your body? Starting with noticing your body is And people oftentimes are so disconnected from our body because we've been conditioned out of that. Also, we've been conditioned out of connecting to the body, can lead us to identifying the feeling that we might be having. So that is really an important part of the process of beginning to identify what do you feel. And I also think it's helpful to narrowing it down to these core emotions. Otherwise, we feel so overwhelmed with all the options that we don't know where to begin. This quote really stuck out to me, and it's one that I really want you to sit with and maybe even write down. Pain that's not transformed will be transmitted. I'm going to say it one more time. Pain that's not transformed will be transmitted. And Richard Rohr actually is the one that said that. And when I heard that for the first time, I stopped in my tracks. I can feel the emotion right now as I said that out loud. The power of, if you do not connect to the pain, you're going to transmit it to other people. Just sit with that for just a minute. Feel that in your body as I say that. Connect to the emotion you feel right now as I say that. I can feel sadness, a wave of sadness coming over me, because the power that we have as a humanity and as a person, and the responsibility we have to take care of ourselves and take care of our pain, is how healing takes place. And sometimes we feel like we take 20 steps back, 30 steps forward, 10 steps back, 20 steps forward. And that's what growth looks like. If you think of a toddler walking, when they first learn to walk, they take some steps and then they sit down and fall. They take some more steps and they sit down and fall. And it's getting back up again. It's willing to say, I'm willing to go back into the pain. I'm willing to go back into the sadness. I'm willing to take care of it. I'm willing to nurture it. I'm willing to embrace it. That will allow us to heal the deep depths of that pain. And so when we look at how do we tend to emotions, this is what seems very foreign to people. And I want to give this example because it recently happened. My husband got a truck, and this has an automatic step that comes out in the truck. And I'm with my daughter and I'm putting the groceries in, and there's all these bags of groceries, and we're putting them in the car, and the step, I got to do a sound effect just so you get the idea, comes out and hits me right in the shin. I mean, bam, you can hear it hit the bone. I take a deep breath. I could feel the emotion, obviously, because it's physical pain. And there's not a differentiating. Our brain doesn't know the difference between physical and emotional pain, by the way. So here I am, I'm with my daughter, and I've been practicing this for a while now. This doesn't just happen overnight. It's a practice. I'm not talking to her. I'm talking to myself. I go, oh, honey, that really hurts. Okay, that's going to leave a mark. Take a deep breath. Ouch, that really hurts. It's going to be okay. We can handle this. You can handle this. I'm saying we as I'm talking to my inner child. I know that sounds kind of hokey pokey, but really what it did is I continue to just nurture myself through it. I was rubbing my leg and I said, oh, that really hurts. It's okay to let your feelings out. Oh, I can see my daughter looks at me and she goes, you're being so kind to yourself, Mom. And I said, that's how you work through pain. That's how you work through physical and emotional pain. She goes, yeah, I do feel a lot better when I talk to myself, and I'm kind when I feel in shame. Because if you live within our house, sorry that your mom is a therapist, but not sorry. We talk about shame. We talk about emotional pain, and she knows what shame is, and that feeling I'm not feeling good enough. And that's one thing she's really learning to work through. But seeing me work through it, she was able to witness how I tended to my pain, how I was working through my pain. And I told her, I said in the car, she goes, how are you feeling? I go, it's actually getting so much better, as I have a big welt on my leg. It's black and blue. I mean, a knot. I said, I actually feel a lot better now. This is really working. I'm saying this out loud as I'm processing. So I was like, this really does work. It doesn't mean the pain isn't there. It doesn't mean the pain disappears. It means the pain is transformed into something I feel like I can handle. And I feel like I can handle it because I'm being compassionate to myself. I'm nurturing myself. It's basically it's reparenting myself, as if that's how I would have wanted somebody to talk to me if I was in pain or injured. And I was able to model that for her. And that wasn't my purpose in doing it, although that was a wonderful byproduct. It was really for me because it really hurt. My pain was high. And what I've learned over time is there's nothing more powerful to transform your pain than to connect with it, acknowledge it, and tend to it in a very kind, nurturing way. So I've been sharing that example because it was so powerful in the moment with clients. A practical example of what are you talking about? Like, you say be kind to yourself, you say be nurturing to yourself, but I don't even know what that means. I don't even know what that looks like. No one's ever talked to me that way. And I'm like, absolutely. This isn't something we're used to being talked to this way. We're used to hearing, we're used to witnessing. And it was a very pivotal moment in my life to say, this really, although I've practiced this for a long time, it was just one of those moments where it really stuck, that the power of this and being kind to yourself and acknowledging your pain and what that can do in your life. And I know that sounds like a kind of maybe even a silly example, but it's a practical example that I hope you will start visualizing a way to start talking to yourself and identifying and acknowledging your own emotions. So I acknowledge my pain, I acknowledge my hurt, my sadness, my fear that this isn't going to get any better. And in order to, and I could have gone into blame, like blame Mark. This stupid truck and this darn, I could have blamed him and been mad at him, which would have been a way to not cope with it well. An easy one to do is one, blame. I can get into blame very easily. And what I noticed is I didn't go into blame. I didn't go into blame, and then I felt better. It worked to help me feel better. So that's an example that I want to encourage you with in your life, to tend to those emotions when they come up. Because what we're doing is we can function from a place of maturity as an adult, or immaturity as the child that didn't get their needs met. And the immature child wants to make everybody else kind of caretake them through it, wants somebody else to come up and say, which does feel good, I'm not going to negate that. I don't want to put the responsibility on someone else to be responsible to caretake my feelings. I want to say that one more time. I don't want to be somebody that puts the responsibility on someone else to caretake my feelings, meaning a partner, a child, a friend, a coworker, insert whomever. The power lies in me being able to do that first for myself. Now, it's icing on the cake if someone offers up empathy, because I want to teach that to every person on the planet, empathy. I have to be empathic with myself. In order to be empathic with myself, I have to connect to the core emotions. In order to have empathy with someone else, I have to connect with my core emotions. I can't disconnect from them. And how many times do we want to disconnect from them? I have to connect with them. Otherwise, I'm not present to my full experience in my life. Therefore, I can't be present with other people. It goes back to that pain that's not transformed will be transmitted. And so I have to take full responsibility for caretaking myself, not put that responsibility as an adult on somebody else. And so that's part of this process of the core emotions, is caretaking yourself, nurturing yourself, be compassionate to yourself. When we don't connect to the feelings, there will be an intensity that grows within you. There will be a significant amount of intensity and disturbance that grow within you. Denial, really, we probably lived in a family system, not to blame or vilify our families, of denial of those core emotions, and therefore probably had a repressed sense of connecting to those feelings, or an intense sense of connecting to those feelings. They may have connected to anger, and you didn't experience some of the other emotions. Or a parent that might have worn a mask and it looked like it was joy, like everything's great all the time, and really it was just a mask to hide the sadness, the fear. And so the takeaways for today are really, one is recognizing those core emotions. And I'm going to go over them one more time because they're so important. And I'll go over them in the anger I kind of originally said. Anger, sadness. Actually, I started with anger, fear, sadness, disgust, joy, excitement, and sexual excitement. If we don't feel those, then anxiety, guilt, and shame are going to evolve. And then the way to work through it is to identify the body's sensation. Again, the breath. I want to go back to the breath, breathing through it, saying that I can stand them. So I can stand to sit with fear. I can stand to sit with sadness. And you might have to say that 100 times. And the last piece is nurturing yourself by saying it makes sense that you feel those feelings. We can handle this. I care about you, and we're going to get through this. Because our shame and our fear want to say, no, we're not going to get through this. We're going to get stuck in it, which is just, again, fear talking. We have to work on reparenting ourselves through it. And I hope this episode was really helpful in understanding and acknowledging the feelings, because that's the birthplace of empathy. The birthplace of empathy and compassion are through connecting to these core emotions for yourself. And then guess what? It flows like the well out of you, not only for yourself, but for other people, your children, your partner. So my invitation is expand yourself. Say, I can stand to connect to these core emotions, and deepen your sense of worth and value, because you have an inherent worth and value, and your shame and your fear want to tell you something different. And when you start working through the core emotions, you start having compassion for all our imperfections, that everybody has these core emotions. That's what connects us all. And my invitation is, don't numb them. I mean, that's a pattern that we got to work on. Work on leaning in, write it out to get it out. Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps, along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week, and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, KRISTEN, Boyce, BOICE.com. Thanks, and have a great day.